Can I ask Craig to start off? 3 minutes. The panel discussion is where to from here. How do we create our preferred future for the industry? And you've got 3 minutes each.
There's a branding opportunity here which I think, and it's not unique to seafood, and seafood's a big bucket, I know, but there's a branding opportunity that I feel that Australia has around our produce, and maybe branding is not the right word. Maybe the word is the reputation, and I say that because the reputation of our products is probably more important than the brand itself. There are thousands, if not millions, of individual brands, and they should be let fly and be successful and do what they do. But the reputation that is I guess the halo effect of the thing that we think so special about that, which is that it comes from here, could probably do with some love, care and support.
Then. Where to from here? I have the privilege of working for Ocean Watch, and we have a very clear vision. We're looking to have a healthy, productive, valued and responsibly used marine environment. I have a second privilege. I work with an incredibly passionate team of people, and they're here. And our role is to work with this incredibly passionate industry. And so, where to from here? I am an optimist, and I believe that we, as an industry, have a really bright future. There's a great depth of resilience that always astounds me, considering how much knocks the industry has to take. But I also feel being somebody who doesn't fish, relies on others to fish or grow my seafood for me. I have a great respect for that, and I know a lot of other people do as well. So where to from here? It's a journey, and it's an exciting one, and one I hope that people take up with enthusiasm, and the last 2 days have given inspiration rather than fear.
Okay, so where to from here? It's a difficult one for me, but probably the best way to do it would be to tell you a story. But when I was a kid, we lived in the country in New Zealand, and my brothers and I were on a dairy farm, and we used to, when it used to get long grass and it was wet, when you ran through it, it would make a trail. So we used to sit at one post, and we'd all say to each other, "There's a post over, let's race." But the rules are you're not allowed to look at the post, you've got to look at your feet. So we used to run at high speed to this post, and then we'd sit back and laugh at how all the trails went everywhere and think, how did that happen? And I suppose that, and now sometimes we find ourselves doing that. We find ourselves just looking at what we're doing, looking at our feet, and we're not looking at the vision. And to use that story, I know, and my brothers and I knew, that if we all ran together and looking at the post, we'd all arrive there together to the same location, roughly around the same time. And I think we need to do that too. We need to sometimes take stock and look at our vision and consolidate it and see if we want to go to the same place, and if we do, go there. And that's one of the things. And the second thing I think that sort of come out of this, and that's that we don't really know our community too. We look at our community, and we don't know whether or not they're going to come on that vision with us. We don't know whether to incorporate them in it, and sometimes we don't understand our community. We forget that we're part of it, and it would be nice to sort of understand the moving parts of our community as well. We all live in cities now. We all need to eat, but actually when we leave the city because we get sick of it, we might not want to go to in an aquaculture context, go to the place where we see fish farms everywhere. We have to understand those disconnects, and we have to, so I think more understanding and more communication and having a singular vision would be something we need for our future.
So I guess it's my turn. I think from my perspective, and when I came into this conference, I think we've got to open our minds and not be frightened of the future. There's a lot coming our way, but there's an enormous amount of opportunity. we're a small industry, and I think our best opportunity to take advantages of those opportunities is if we collaborate more. We're an industry that tends to compete with ourselves instead of working together. Yeah. Hi, can you hear me now? Yeah, we're an industry that tends to work with us, compete with ourselves rather than working out where, if we get together and work together, we'll be both better off. And that's very much across all sectors. So I think collaborate and take advantage of the opportunities across sectors with other products. I saw an offer from Peter Hayden from the pork industry where he argued that seafood and pork, our competitors are not one another, it's beef and chicken. And he suggested that we should collaborate with pork so that we can both take advantage of our small uniqueness, but get efficiency of investment. And then from other industries, this afternoon we had Margie Osmond from the tourism industry, and tourism is one of the country's biggest export industries, and the growth in tourism is being built around food experiences, and we've got a massive opportunity to take part in that both domestically and with domestic tourists, but also international tourists. But finally, I think we've got to become customer-centric. Too often, and I've been as guilty of this as anyone else, we think we know what the customer wants until we go and ask them. And we've done some recent work in this space and found out stuff that we didn't even think about, like the customers that come to the market. There's a whole group of customers that are coming there with different purposes, and we're trying to give them the one solution, whereas each of them are coming for a different reason. So we've got to take more focus on what the customers are wanting in terms of our products and deliver products that they want.
Hi. So from an Seafood Industry Australia perspective, I think I want to reinforce the idea that SIA is now fully operational and ready to go, and that's a wonderful achievement. Although something that I've been talking a little bit about with people today is the congratulations and the pat on the back that I've been getting and everybody involved has been getting. And I said that in some ways, and I tend to quote George Kalis a lot, but he said the difference between getting something done and what you do and what you achieve. And SIA in many ways is actually just righting a wrong. So we've righted a wrong. We've put the national body back in place, and that's a good thing. But the achievements and the action and the work is actually starting now. So that's a very exciting position. I think where I see SIA is critical is from a business perspective. So in our business, we have a strategy. We've got a strategic plan that covers every element of the business. It's organic and it's global. It's across the entire, and that's what SIA represents, is a national strategy for the industry, not to replace any other organisation, to respect the work that all the other organisations and bodies are doing in the industry, but actually just give it some body and some direction, and actually ensure that every resource in the industry is being used efficiently. So I think that's really important. Where I see the future, or where I think SIA can actually give the most benefit, is through collaboration. So actually reaching out across to other industries, whether it's pork or other sectors. So recreational fishing, a really important one. Food service. So there are some issues that we have and divergence we have with food service, but we haven't put enough time into actually sitting next to food service, who are our customers. We have to really consider that and say, what is the world from your view? It's funny, I was thinking about how sometimes you may look at a person, you might see someone regularly, but you don't really get to know them until you actually sit down and talk with them. And it's often hard you can sometimes dislike someone, but it's often hard to dislike them after you've actually had a conversation with them and understood what they're trying to achieve. So I think that's really important. That's where SIA needs to work. And I also think, again, that the concept of storytelling, communication, and not letting perfection impede our activity. So we have left a void. We need to take back control of that conversation. And we have to actually, understand that facts don't always solve it. We have to get creative. So not distort the facts, but actually put some context around them and make sure people understand why we're presenting these facts, what it is that we're trying to achieve. So.
G'day. So what did I think? I was actually bloody scared the last 2 days, I have to tell you. And I don't think it's a worry about being scared. I really resonated with what Nick said. And I actually think we could all write a description of our industry, narcissists, thrill seekers, want to kill ourselves at every step of the day, not really good communicators, we like to be alone. We could probably go through, I don't know about the drug habits and all the other things that he had, but I do think it is fair to be, at most of our industry, a lot of the time, we are scared. We're scared of the future. And I think, having conferences like this, I think it's really nice to hear what's happening, but I don't know if it necessarily solves the thing that we're still scared about. And, I really resonate about, the incredible complexity that we've heard in the last 2 days. And then you look at a panel of us and you expect us to come up with a solution to all of the things that we've heard. I do think what I did hear in the last 2 days is that there's a lot of information out there, and if you don't come along and hear it, you're going to be a lot worse off. And, we have a great saying, it's better to do something than do nothing. And we heard that resonated many, many times in the last 2 days. I think it's key to me that some of the things I did hear about some of the solutions that you could, achieve so you wouldn't be afraid about this future. It's not a problem about thinking outside the box. In fact, our industry is really good at thinking around the box. I go fishing with a lot of people, and there's one skill that we're really good at when we go fishing is thinking outside the box. And so maybe we need to leverage our out-of-the-box thinking in this future. The other one is we really kick around with a whole lot of really weird people. And that's a real strength of ours. And so how do we use the strength of our ability to be able to get on with so many different people as one of our strengths? And, I asked myself, how can you do that? We take a lot of risks as an industry. I think the future is going to require us to take risks. But, we're also going to have people like SAA and others to help us navigate the risks and find a pathway through. So what I hear the last few days, I heard a lot of really amazing things. I think I said last time I could have finished at morning tea yesterday and been really happy about the conference. But today it just kept blowing me away with all the amazing things that we've done. I'd say we just got to be a little bit careful about the grinding the handle bit. We can keep grinding the handle and just do it a little bit better, but doing something just a little bit better mightn't solve the future. And maybe that's why I have to be scared, because if you're not scared, you're not going to solve that grinding the handle problem.
Wow, I'm impressed you all kept 2 times. Thanks, except Patrick. So that's kind of pretty good. Sorry, Patrick. We have 2 mics, so do we have any questions from the floor? Ooh, sorry, guys. Just talk clearly into the mic and the guys will make sure it works.
Hello. Yes. So all the way through the conference, we've been told about the cutting edge, about being out in front. It's that 1% of people that are going to take it all up. If I had 100 people on my boat, well, maybe 10 people on my boat, and they all step to the first 1% of the boat, my boat's going to go under. Isn't there, what's your thoughts on having some sort of strategy around the things that you're good at, maybe, the things that you're going to be at that front end, and maybe the things that you step back and let other people take the lead? Surely we can't all take the lead on everything.
Brian, you put your hand up first.
Yeah, I think that's what I was getting at in saying that we need to collaborate, because we're not all good pardon me, we can't all be good at everything. And if you focus on what you're good at and work with people that are better than you in other spaces, as an industry, I think we'll be better off. I know that's an oversimplification, but we do need to try and get away from the bit of trying to do everything ourselves in little silos and work with one another and focus on the things that each of us do well, because combined we'll be better off. And I'm not sure how we do that as an industry. It's companies can partner up with other companies. We do it a bit at Sydney Fishmarket, but we need to learn to do that, I think, and focus where we're good, be aware of what's available and partner up with the sectors or other industries. In your case, maybe tourism is a big potentially big partner, so that you grow the pie that way.
Can I just add
Sure can.
something to that? There's a mindset in that, and there's a mindset, I think, in that the way that the question was asked too, which is, are you a victim or a leader? And that's a personal choice. You choose how you wish to behave, right? If you have a leader mindset, then you obviously stick to what you're good at and do that even better. But with that comes a level of curiosity that you don't just assume you'll be pulled along. And I think that's true of anybody in any industry, to be naturally curious about, how could I do that better? How could I do that differently? You don't have to do all the work. You don't have to do all the research. There's plenty of other really smart people around. Like Steve Jobs said, he pays smart people to tell him what to do, right? And we've got research agencies and universities and all sorts of wonderful people that, when given the right research signal, when they're told exactly what you want, fix this real world problem for me, here, they're the signals that they love to hear. So that's what I would say.
Anyone else want to buy in from the panel? No?
I just say the word trust is something that we all need to grow in each other. It's a hard one, especially when it's such a competitive industry. I saw one tweet saying that maybe the competition should end as at the wharf. I like that tweet, actually. I'm not sure who it was, but I saw that one.
Can you see the tweets?
No, I was watching on my phone. I was using technology.
Very good.
Ben.
They're flicking through quite
Actually-
quickly, the tweets.
Lara, sorry, if I can just pick up on competition. I'm a retailer. I don't see competition as bad. I think competition is good. Competition doesn't have to end with blood, but competition actually makes you better. So one way to innovate is to actually keep highlighting the innovation. It's why we had an award ceremony last night. We had that so we could highlight the work that was happening. And actually, the more you highlight, the more it motivates other people in the industry to say, well, he did it, I'm going to do it. I spend a lot of time talking to other retailers with my retail hat on, sort of trying to talk to them about the perils of taking shopping centre leases and, and be careful of sort of capital, carrots that a lot of landlords will dangle in front of you. And they say, why do you care? Do you want this space for yourself? And I say, I care because we're together. All retailers are together. We all need to, we compete, but we need to make each other better. So I think competition is something that sometimes people back away from. So collaboration does not mean a lack of competition. So you have to drive each other, because the human spirit, actually, we fight harder against adversity. Some of the best things come out of industries after a crisis. So.
But can I just make a comment? Glenn, what I'd like to think in 2, 10, 20 years' time, there's still a guy sitting on a boat who wants to fish in the Coorong in the authentic way, and the Australian community respects that. And we've found a way as an industry to make sure that that can happen. Just like you can go to France and you can see authentic people still growing grapes like they did 100 years ago. I think the Australian public will not accept people 3D printing on the end of the Meningie jetty your seafood. And so to me, we've got to find a way of making sure you're still fishing in 10, 20, 30, 40 years' time in a habitat that's healthy for fish. And I think that's a real challenge because you can do all this innovation and lose the authenticity of the imagery. The worst thing that would ever happen if 12 nautical miles off the coastline is the first time you ever find a commercial fisher. That would be the worst thing for this fishing industry. So we have a challenge, and I think, you know, on that first day, Caleb Gardner made some really good points for you. He said, we can keep pushing the price of seafood up and put more profit into fishers' pockets, but you'll lose the consumer because they won't be able to buy your seafood. So we've got to keep asking ourselves, how can we be relevant to consumers, keep seafood affordable, but make sure that that authenticity of our industry, the visible bit. You know, we were in Hobart last week. You go to Constitution Dock and you see a fleet of fishing boats in a capital city. You go to Sydney Fish Market, you go down the road, you see boats. It is so great to see that. Wouldn't it be horrible if you never saw the fleet?
Thank you. Aaron?
I totally agree, but when I wrote down my notes here when the question was asked was the word courage. I just think it makes sense for us to do what we do best, but we should also have the courage to be able to be comfortable that with other people doing things that we don't do so well. And I think, and like you said, Laurie, it's about trust as well. I think if we can do that, we'll be all right.
It's the time to be brave, do you think? Thank you for that. Would you like to put your question forward, please?
Thank you. That's a surprise. I would like to ask the panel how we get to a future where our families are happy that we're in the seafood industry. Veronica raised it on day one. Oh, can't hear me, sorry. Okay, I was going to ask the panel how our families can be happy that we're in this industry. That means pride in the fact that we're in the industry. It means professionalism in everything we do, but most of all, it means an industry that is safe. So everybody that goes on a boat out to sea or works in a restaurant or works in a retail shop is safe, because nobody mentions safety. And that's really interesting given we are the worst industry for safety. So I'd like to throw that to all of you, and thank you.
Don't all answer at once. Aaron, have a go.
All I know is for us, it's one of the most important things in the world, making sure that we can do our work and come home from doing our work afterwards. On a different hat in the pearling industry, we take it absolutely, it's the apex of the industry. It's if we're not safe, if our divers aren't safe, the people on the boat aren't safe, the people doing everything else aren't safe, then obviously it's not being done right. So yeah, I think it's the most important thing in the world.
Anybody else want to answer that?
Look, I would just echo that. It's one of the reasons why at Sydney Fish Market we put an enormous amount of resources into food safety and people safety and environmental management, because we want to have staff that are proud of working there. And it's not just that, it's also about treating the people well, encouraging them to put ideas in, letting them be adventuresome in the work they do. In the last 6 months, I've been trying to change the way we've been doing our business, because our business needs to change. Our business of the future will not be a traditional fish market selling dead fish. It is going to be a community space specialising in food and leisure and tourism built on a fish market. And so I need to get a change of culture in there. And it's only 6 months since we started doing that. And one of the ladies that recently joined our staff on the floor was at the women's breakfast this morning. And she works the night shift. She came, worked all night, started at about 10 o'clock last night, worked all night and came to that breakfast this morning because she cares, even though she's a new employee. She said, I love this. And we need to create that in our team so that when they say they love working for the industry, they then become our ambassador. Somebody said that if you know, the life cycle of employment is, we're atypical. We tend to stay, but in most of the industries of the future, people will come, do something, move on. And that's going to change more and more. And if that happens, we want those people to come, do something, and when they move on to another industry, say, gee, the seafood industry's fantastic, I had a great time there, I learnt this and this and this, and they become an ambassador for us in another industry. We have to do that. You won't do it unless you've got safety and pride.
I'll talk about safety quite directly, because I think when we think about safety, we think about boats, but from the retail perspective, we hired an OH&S consultant to come into the business, and we were very comfortable. We were like, fine, we do a good job, come in. We didn't even go there to sort of walk the consultant around. We were so confident in what the consultant would find. And she sat down with us at the end of the day, and she said that she'd taken one of our guys, mid-20s, into the cool room and saw a stack of Sydney Fish Market boxes, and they were stacked sort of 10 high, and she said and they were sort of 4 or 5 rows next to them. And she said to the young man, so how do you get to the top boxes? And he said, oh, we just climb. And I said, really? And she said, yes. He said, we just climb. And he actually then demonstrated how he climbed up the different... So thank God we had paid the consultant. Lucky it wasn't work cover at the time. So, but what it did do was make us re-look at the culture. And what we found was that there's a lot of rah-rah, a lot of young, strong people working for us, and they egged each other on to throw the boxes higher and to work longer and to take more risks. And we realised that the culture was actually coming from us. So we worked very long hours. We didn't have a lot of... it was more about getting the job done. It wasn't about how we got the job done. So we had to start at the top of the organisation and actually work our way down and start looking at working smarter, not harder. We had to change things like the hours of work. A 15-hour shift was normal. So they started at 6 in the morning and they finished at night when the job was done. And we even managed store managers. We've moved to sort of 3-day, 4-day weeks instead of 6-7 days a week. You know, it was just actually sitting down and having a look at it, but it had to come from us. We had to change the culture. So I think, you know, putting a microscope over it and really acknowledging what you're doing well and what you're not doing well is the first step.
Thank you for that question. Have you got a question? Yeah, sorry, Larry. Got to be quicker.
To address the question of pride, and this is something I'm really interested in, because I think if you put an 8-year-old child with a fisher on a boat or at a farm with aquaculture and let them explore and talk and understand, the pride in what this industry does comes through really quick, and the child gets it really fast, because it's a really exciting business to be around, and the passion is obvious. So I've seen that, I've witnessed it. And
I would agree. I do presentations to primary schools, and it's fantastic.
It is, yeah.
You can see the light turn on.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for that. We have a question if you'd like to go to the mic. Just make sure that... Sorry, Bob, we've just got one first. We'll take the last 2 questions and then I'll hand over to Patrick for the wrap-up.
Thanks very much, Leonie. I think there's been some really two big extremes in the messages coming out of the conference. One is the very high-tech, futurist, need to take risk, don't be afraid of failure, embrace the future. And that's being met head-on by very fundamental and basic messages about humanity and how we engage and how we treat one another as just basic principles for business and interaction and collaboration. I think there's no argument about either of those extremes in the room. What I'd like to ask the panel is, to what extent do you see this to be a challenge to translate down? What we've got in this audience is a very erudite, very, top-level people. But when we're dealing with this down through the levels, right to the dog, how are we going to translate these messages and how are we going to operationalise them and get people behind, you know, what has been exciting everyone the last couple of days? Thanks.
Do you have someone on the panel that would like to answer that? She's quiet.
Can I say,
Go on, Veronica,
No,
you
no.
have to go.
we have to talk
No.
to them. I think we have to talk to them at the wharf, at the farm. You have to talk to them. You have to explain, have to take the message to those who are not here. It's really important we do that because they're not here. They're not hearing it. The message is in the audience.
Veronica?
So I'll go back to my previous story, which was a very similar concept. So look, again, the high tech, you do listen to it and you get a bit overwhelmed. Like I get a little bit exhausted listening to all that and thinking, does it really apply to us? And you know it does. But, and keeping up with that change, I think, is, it's actually human nature. I think we do evolve and we do adjust. Sometimes I think we're quite discerning as humans because we wait until it's right. So we can hear a lot about robotics and artificial intelligence and all these sort of, you know, great concepts. But we tend to, as a population, we get on board when it's right. So we need to let them sort of, let the, you know, the brain, the technology brains innovate and do what they want. And then when it's in, I think Roz used the word, you know, user-centric format, then we'll adopt it. So it's not as scary a prospect moving forward, the high tech. In terms of how you communicate it, I think, in a similar way, once it's user-friendly, it's actually very easy to communicate. So on a lot of concepts we deal with in a business, and even for SIA, with something like country of origin labelling, you have to get the why right. So as soon as you have as soon as the message is simple, and not sort of constructed, and once it actually feels simple, and you understand the reason that you're doing something, very easy to communicate between human beings. So I think it's almost like the chicken or the egg. Is it difficult to communicate down to the dock or down to the shop floor, or is it that we haven't got the message right?
Craig, did you want
Just
to say something?
to perhaps add to that, I think we've got to be careful we don't look at innovation as being the solution unless we know the problem. And so that was what I was trying to touch on when I was talking about get to know the customer. What is the customer looking for? And the innovation may not actually be technology. It might just be innovation in the way you do stuff. And so I think what we've got to do is get into the heads of the customer and understand what the customer is looking, whether it's a B2B customer or whether it's a consumer, whether it's a student, whether it's they all are customers for our services or our products. And if you throw a solution that's not solving a problem or filling a demand for that customer, it will fail. So don't start with the technology, start with the customer challenge and then work out the solution, and the technology might be part of the solution. I think that's the way we've got to look at it.
One of the things you don't do is you don't send me. So I know the answer. Don't send me.
Can I ask Craig to make a comment and then I'll go on to the next question?
Yeah, I'll try and be quick. In terms of it's the analogy I used before, which was the fire hydrant, right? So you can drink from the fire hydrant as much as you like, and I like gadgets as much as the next guy and techie stuff, and that's great. But there comes a point where you have to sort of stop and press pause. As humans, we're not real good at that. We'll just consume. And frankly, things like this in front of us here, which is driven by AI, what pops up and what doesn't, are very consuming and very addictive. So the really clever people are the people that are able to press pause and give themselves time to think and come up with different ways of thinking. And everybody's different. If you think about the whole evolution of technology and wherever you want to start, doesn't matter. Electricity, the shipping container, gas-fired power stations through to nuclear power. That all of the evolutions of that are essentially to try and make life better. That's really what they're trying to do. And when you're looking at the shared prosperity of an industry, the best thing I've heard in the last 12 months was a farmer on a header last harvest and he said to me, I was asking him about how much he uses of the header, right? $800,000 machine, beautiful machine, technology like you would not believe sitting in that machine. He says, my attitude is I'll let the robot do what it's good at and I do what I'm good at. I don't think there's ever a time that that's been more true. Both now and into the next sort of 3 to 5 years, absolutely. Let it do what it does.
Thanks, Craig. We are short, so Bob, can you ask your question? This will be the last one before I hand over to Patrick.
Thank you. The first thing I'd like to say is I think this has been the most amazing seafood thing I've ever been to. It's been just extraordinary. I think that the formation of this SIA and the effort that's gone into that really paid off. I heard the seafood industry leaders take responsibility and ownership of basically public attitude towards the industry, not complaining but saying how do we improve our image. I think that's a really fantastic step forward. I also think that the information brought to us on the future and the changes that are emerging is a real eye-opener for us and makes us all realise we have to position ourselves for the future. That's the second aspect. I also would just like to speak very briefly on the issue of country of origin labelling. I think the information we really want to be able to get to people, to the consumer, is product is from Australia. That's really the message we want. So if they choose to do it, the information comes right to the restaurant door, right to the back door. It gets traced all across the world, what the fish ate, where they were caught, blah, blah, blah. It comes right to the back door. We want to make it the last 10 metres, so that's basically informed consumer choice. Now, if you disagree with that, but call it what it is. And then the other issues raised is pricing differentials. Well, that's market forces operating, and if you're opposed to market forces operating, declare that. But it's basically consumer choice and market forces. They're the actual drivers of it. And of course, the food service industry is vital to us. We love them. We want them to survive and thrive. They're our friends, they're our allies. But we do operate in a very high-cost environment. We have reputation because of what we do. And if there is a price differential because of that, we're entitled to it. Anyway, that's my statement. No.
Thank you, and I will take that as a statement, not a question. So, and I think everybody was nodding around the room, so I think you've got a lot of agreement here. I'd actually like to hand over to Patrick now to do the final wrap-up session. And